Welcome back to Daring and Doing. I'm Will Hester, and I'm joined by the brilliant Ben Bowman. How you doing, mate?
I'm good, mate. Do you want to know why I'm wearing this shirt?
Go on.
Because it's got someone on the back, and it means something for what we've seen in the last few hours.
The
So if you can guess who's on the back.
Kane.
No.
Oh,
even better. Even better. I don't know if you can see if I turn around.
Eric Dyer. Oh
Eric
my days.
Dyer. Champions League patch on the sleeve as well. It's meant to be. It's meant to be. Eric Dyer is going to knock out all this talk about Harry Kane. He scored like 14 goals against Arsenal in the Premier League or whatever, like more than any other club. Eric Dyer's big noggin is going to knock Arsenal out of the Champions League.
Shush him as well.
Exactly, exactly like last time. But no, I'm good, mate. I'm all good. It's been nice to sort of dine out on the Villa game for a week or so. It's been quality.
I'm still buzzing.
Mate, me too.
I think you might be the only person I ever known to have Eric Dyer on the back of a Spurs shirt, by the way. But I rate it. I do rate it. It's a very nice shirt.
I love it. It was like, I swear we only wore this shirt like twice, and it was like Madrid away and Juventus away in the Champions League. So if you're gonna have it, I didn't. Just want to preface that I didn't buy it at the time, which actually probably makes it worse. I bought this about 4 months ago.
Oh, really?
It was like, I saw someone was selling it on Twitter, and I was like, I really like the shirt.
It is
and
nice.
I was like, I've always had a soft spot for Dyer, and I was just like, you know what? He's going to go in January. How can I remember him? I know. So I bought this. I was just like, it was, it's an underrated kit, I think.
It is it's proper nice. It's proper nice. I do miss those sort of like Champions League kits. The kits from those those seasons, season there and the one after. The away kits
the one
so
after
nice,
this,
like in Europe.
Yeah, the one after this would have been the Mora one, wouldn't it? That was the third kit after this.
That's nice. Yeah, that was a nice kit. But it's so destined for Harry Kane to knock Arsenal out of the Emirates, isn't it? We will be 100%. There, 100%.
Yeah, I was going to say I wanted to try and get a ticket in the away end, but there's no Bayern fans allowed at the game. Did you see about this?
No?
Yeah, because when they played Lazio in the last leg, or in the last round, sorry, they threw a load of flares onto the pitch, so they got a 1-game ban for their away fans.
Oh, bloody hell.
So literally, the first leg at the Emirates is going to be full of gooners, and it's just going to be it's going to be unbearable. If you think they've been bad this week, one with the whole Ben White stuff, one with it's going to be unbearable. But Harry Kane is going to put you just got caned. That's what's going to happen to Arsenal.
Yeah, they're going to boo him every single touch. It's going to be it's going to be a different atmosphere for him. Obviously, he's going to be, every touch he gets, they're just going to give him shit. But I do think he'll do one more thing for us and knock him out 100%.
Yeah, he's going to do him over.
Yeah. Can you see my presents from my mum?
I can, mate.
My mum saw that it looked like I was in the toilet for all so she was like, let me jazz it up a bit. She got me the Dares to Do, and then I got this as well.
Love it. I noticed that. It's the right colours as well. It's the podcast colours.
Yeah.
You're still in a toilet, just a Tottenham themed toilet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It does look like that, doesn't it? I do need to sort of relocate. But let's get into it then. We're previewing the Tottenham versus Fulham game tomorrow early evening. But first of all, I want to touch on that Kulusevski interview because it was so good, and it gives me goosebumps even thinking about it now. What do you think of it?
It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. I think it was perfectly timed as well, in a sense that not purposefully, but in the sense that Kulusevski, we talked about it on the podcast last week about some of the he splits opinion, doesn't he, Kulusevski? Right? There's a lot of the fan base that really rate him and really appreciate him for what he does. But there are certain elements of the fan base that get frustrated with his performances and stuff. But I think that letter was just that perfect encapsulation of one, how all of us fans are kind of feeling about Postecoglou, and it was amazing to see, especially how he referenced the Chelsea game in the sense that we are kind of all together, and the fact that the message that Ange is trying to put across to the players of we keep going, we don't abandon kind of who we are, is bleeding into the players, but also the fans are aware of how the players are aware of how appreciative the fans were of that game. He obviously talked about at the end of the game where the fans didn't boo the team, got behind them the whole way, was singing. I mean, I was at the game that night. It was special, and I think it's only something that Spurs fans are going to realise what that means. Obviously we kind of had it at the time where fans were sort of bantering us for like, well, you got battered at home to Chelsea. It's like, yeah, but it didn't feel like that, and you can't take that away from us. And I think it's amazing to see that how that sort of that feeling transferred to the players as well. But in terms of just the more general stuff about where we're going and Ange and the kind of his story as well, it was beautiful. And I mean, me and you talked about it last week. I've loved Kulusevski ever since he's stepped foot in the door at the club, and I think that his mentality, and we talked about this with Ange as well, like in the sense that Ange has instilled like a greater winning mentality at Tottenham than either of our two previous kind of win now managers have done in Mourinho and Conte. And I think that's amazing to see that is rubbing off on the players. And Kulusevski was obviously aware of the fact that we need to deliver trophies. That's what we want to do. That's what we're working towards, and all that sort of stuff. And it's just, it's amazing to see. I think it's just a great affirmation of how on the same page all the fans, the manager, and the players are. It was beautiful. So like open, so honest, so raw. That the Players Tribune, like generally, is an amazing outlet for players. There's been some really good articles written in there by certain players, sort of telling their story, and that was an amazing part of it as well. I love the bit where he was talking about his sister. Saying how hard on him that she is and all that kind of stuff, and texting him after games, and everyone's like, well, we should get her as part of the coaching staff. She sounds brilliant. But it was so beautiful. Still such a young guy, like to speak that kind of candidly, I think was amazing. What did you think of it?
Well, like you just touched on it there, like how young he is to have that sort of mentality and that attitude towards his life, towards his head's so screwed on towards his life, his career. Obviously, you talked about how he's met his fiance, didn't he? And like
that was amazing. That story, it was just that you can't make that stuff up. Like. No. To go back home into Sweden during lockdown and then be playing, what was he playing, basketball? Was he playing football, like over the courts? And just seen her, and it was like, it's just, these things are just like, it was just amazing. The whole thing knitted together was just a beautiful story.
I know, it was all about like fearlessness, wasn't it? Like he even brought that into like him asking her out or him getting her Instagram, and then he sort of compared that to being on the pitch and stuff. It was crazy. But I forgot how young he was, mate. Like he comes across as like one of the senior players on the pitch, but was he 23 years old? 4 years ago, I know lockdown feels like yesterday, but he was talking about his lockdown experience being an academy player for Atalanta. He hadn't even broken through to the first team yet, and he was like doing what everyone was doing, playing like pro clubs and stuff into the early hours of the morning. So it's crazy how young he is to be that level-headed. And the quotes on Ange. So what did he say? He said about Ange's quotes on winning and losing. He says, I don't care if we lose. Everyone loses in life. If we lose, we're going to lose on our terms. Yeah. And that just sums it all up with the players and Ange and the way we prepare for games. It just instills such a fearlessness in the team. And then you compare that to the pressure of winning under Mourinho, Conte. If you don't win, it's like the end of the world. And we're never going to win a trophy. All this stuff. The pressure builds up. And you can see that in the performances. When we're under Ange, we're fearless. We're constantly going again, attack, keep the ball, play risky, play a risky gameplay out in possession, out from the back, invite pressure. And then you see Conte Mourinho ball, us being scared. It had there was so much pressure on seeing out games. You'd score a goal and then you'd revert back and into a really deep block, inviting pressure, and we'd always collapse, and it would always be the end of the world. So it was just the whole thing, and then the quotes on Ange just really it fills you with confidence that we're definitely going somewhere in this process, in this project, and that I really think with the way Ange is going about it, putting the pressure completely off the players on the fact that we have to win. I do think we'll win a trophy at the end of this. I do, because we're heading that way. We're on that trajectory.
I agree. And I think that's a really interesting point about taking the pressure off the players. It's something I remember Mickey van der Ven spoke about after the Arsenal game, after the Arsenal away game. And he sort of said that there was a point in the game where we were under pressure in that first sort of 20 minutes and Postecoglou from the sidelines was just shouting at them saying, play, just carry on playing, calm. And after the game, it's just, he spoke about it. And it was like, that kind of empowering of these young players to take the pressure off them and say, if this goes wrong, it's because I'm telling you to do this. Like, it's on me. And I think we've got such a perfect young blend of players that, obviously as time goes on, the training wheels have to come off and the responsibility has to fall onto the players in terms of individual performances and that sort of stuff over time. But in its infancy, in this kind of embryonic stage in the first season under Postecoglou, that's exactly the kind of mentality that you want to approach it with.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that he brought up, I think it's really interesting that he brought up the City game in his first season, where he obviously scored within the first couple of minutes and then assisted the winner at the end. Obviously, after a couple of games where he struggled in the first few games for Spurs. And I love the fact that he said that he didn't really celebrate with the players. He just turned around to the crowd and screamed, "I'm him." And like you said, like he was a young guy, and he's obviously gone to these clubs, and Juventus felt that he wasn't good enough and kind of been passed around, and he's always going to have doubts over him because of his lack of pace. He's not your kind of traditional winger, and I think our fans kind of get too caught up sometimes on what the idea of like an Ange winger is, and it's all about the system, and it's all about Postecoglou, and it's all about how these players fit in within a system. But actually, what Kulusevski brings to the team is so much more than how he fits in the system. His bravery, you saw that with City away this year. He was like a Trojan. He stepped up in the last minute of the game, bullet header, bang, last minute. And again, he had that moment at the Etihad, that kind of cold celebration at the end of the game where it was like, this is about, I'm delivering. This is about me. I'm stepping up. And that's exactly what he did during that run as well. Like when we had no Maddison, when he got asked to play through the middle in that 10 role, he thrived because not only in terms of positionally, because he's spoke often about the fact that he thinks that the playing as a 10 is his best role. But in terms of stepping up and showing that leadership and showing that responsibility, like you think of Forest away, doing it. That goal, I know he was a bit lucky with how Matt Turner handled it, but just like wallop, like power, he like in the cross for Richarlison in that game. Newcastle at home pulling all the strings, like that run of games when Maddison was out and Kulusevski was playing as that kind of the top of the diamond in midfield. He was just superb, and I think it's just testament to his character really in terms of how he stepped up in that run. It was just a beautiful thing, that article, and I think that there'll be fans that maybe doubted him or didn't see him in a certain way that after reading that will have completely changed their minds. And I just love him, and I think he's arguably one of our most important players, and I just don't think without him in the team we don't look the same. And that's what I mean about the whole thing about people get too caught up around what an Ange winger is. Like Kulusevski might be the antithesis of that in kind of his nature, but what he brings to the team is just too important not to have there for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love Kulusevski, and I fucking love Ange. And how wholesome was that video midweek of him meeting Owen again?
Yeah,
the Tottenham fan that was from the fan forum, seeing him again. How touching was that video?
It was beautiful, man. Like it was sweet enough, sort of seeing him have the embrace and the interaction with him at the start of the video. But I had a lump in my throat when he took him into his office and sort of showed him the picture like that, and the fact that he's like, "I've got you every day. I see you every day in my office," signed by him. I was like, it was just amazing. And I made a video about it and talking about the fact that I don't think I've ever been prouder to kind of be like a Spurs fan. Really, we've got some amazing representatives of the club in terms of the manager, the players, and it was all kind of timed beautifully with the Kulusevski interview as well. And some of the things that our fans do and who represent us as well. There's obviously gonna be a few eggs, but I think we're just as a whole club, from the fans, players, and coach, we're going in the right direction. It was just a beautiful thing, and I think it's just Ange is just one of those managers that I think every single football fan wishes they had at their club. That kind of guy. He's just, he's the statesman, he's the representative. He's just such an amazing person. Yeah. And yeah, it was beautiful. Just such an amazing thing to see, the memories that these people can sort of hold off of, just taking the time out of your day to do something like that. It's just incredible. I love him, man. It was beautiful.
Yeah, you could see the impact it made on Owen as well. You could see how happy he was, and it was really, really special to see.
You could hear his mum as well, because obviously his mum was at the forum as well. I remember that, and I remember you could hear her in the background in that video. Just sort of it was like she was trying to hold back, almost like the tears, and saying it was lovely. It was just such a beautiful moment. He's an amazing man, an amazing manager, but just an even better human being as well. And that, I think sometimes that gets lost in the modern day of football. So I'm proud to have him as our coach.
Well, that's it. It makes you proud to have him, and you just touched on it there about how being a good human first. That's what he's always coming back to in his press conferences when he's talking about his players. He wants them to be good people first before good players. And then again, that it improves the squad cohesion, the feel around the environment around the place. But he leads by example. Do you know what I mean? He really, really epitomizes what it is to be a good person first and then professional. So we're so lucky to have him. We're so lucky to have him.
Yeah, 100%, mate.
Right, moving on to the Fulham game, because we need to win these games now. We've smashed Villa. You could see the confidence that gave us, but also you could see our mindset of after the game, look, job's done, let's move on to the next one. That we've been saying how we've got 11 games left. This is a game where we need to repeat that again and get that run of momentum. But Fulham are a really good team, and they're going to have the home advantage. What is Fulham's biggest threat, and how do you expect them to play against us?
Well, it's going to be difficult. Like you said, there's no easy games in the Premier League, and I think we're looking at this now as a bit of a winnable run for Spurs before the kind of run of death towards the end of the season in Arsenal, City and Liverpool, which I don't feel bad about, by the way. I do feel confident about those games, but this is, like you said, this is the crunch time now. This is where you've got to show how serious you are and how serious your ambitions are, because these are a winnable run of games. But Fulham will be tough. We saw against Man United away how quick they can be on the transition, how dominant their midfield was that day. Although I've said it multiple times, you could drive a bus through that Man United midfield. Loads of teams have gone to Old Trafford and had that sort of joy. And that was without Paulinho as well. So it's testament to how well Fulham have been, how well Fulham have played this season. They've been a bit up and down. But I think it's what you have to look at is their results against some of the top teams. Obviously, they beat Arsenal at home on New Year's Eve. They gave Liverpool a really good run over 2 legs in the League Cup semi-final. I think they drew at home. 1-0, obviously knocked us out of the League Cup, although it was a very different period of the season and a very different Spurs team. They're a massive threat. I think Muniz up front has sort of come in and added a different dynamic to their attack. Obviously, that was the one the one thing that people were talking about at the start of the season. A lot of people were tipping for them to go down with the sale of Mitrovic and how important that was going to be for them. But whether it's been Muniz or even Carlos Vinicius and a Breuer they've signed in January, who hasn't quite had the impact yet. But
I forgot about that.
They've managed to cope with the loss of Mitrovic well. But it's their midfield, I think, is probably their biggest asset. I'm not sure whether Paulinho is available for tomorrow because he hasn't played in the last few games. They beat Brighton at home in the last Premier League game at home 3-0. They kind of brushed them aside. Brighton had moments in the game, but I think, again, on the counter-attack, they look really, really dangerous with Willian, who still, at this age, is proven to still have that quality. They've obviously got Traore, who they can bring off the bench. In the transition, they can be really dangerous. Harry Wilson's been super impressive this season. I think he's actually found the club now and found a level where he can be settled and really kind of put in the string of performances week in, week out. He's been really impressive this season. So much technical quality. Like, I think with him, it's always been a matter of time of just finding the right club, finding the right environment, and then he'll thrive. And I think you're seeing that at Fulham now with Wilson. At the back, I think we saw how vulnerable they can be when we played them at home. Obviously, I think Calvin Bassey has grown a lot since then. Like, he scored the winner at Old Trafford a few weeks ago. And he's grown in confidence. Obviously, Anthony Robinson is a threat down that left-hand side, dovetailing with Willian. So it's not going to be easy. I actually think kind of, as much as, you expect to kind of win your home games, I actually think being away from home for us in this game is important off the back of the momentum that we can sort of build from Villa last week. Like, our away fans are always brilliant. It's kind of a London derby-ish. It's a 5:30 Saturday kickoff. We're going to be well up for it. And those fans will be right there behind them. So I actually think having it as an away game, I think benefits Tottenham a little bit as well, despite the fact it might benefit Fulham in the sense that they want to soak up the pressure and they can hit us on the counter.
Yeah.
But I think we've just got to look to go on there and, like we have done in recent games, be patient, get on the ball from minute one, make it about us, make it our game and show how good we are. But Fulham are a threat and, they're kind of sitting in this little mini table in the league with Chelsea, Bournemouth, Wolves, are sort of interchanging. And I know there's a bit of a gap now between Chelsea and Fulham after Chelsea won on Monday, but they're in that sort of mini pocket of teams that haven't had amazing seasons in terms of the context of where they are in Chelsea and Newcastle. But you've got teams like Fulham and Bournemouth really punching above their weight. And they're kind of sitting in that mini league. And they've been inconsistent, but they've also been brilliant at times. So it's not going to be easy at all. It's not going to be easy, but they're a good side.
They are. They're a really tidy team, and they're not going to park the bus. I don't think they're not going to. You know how teams have played Spurs recently, and they've just dropped into a low block and just trying to make us frustrated. I don't think they're going to do that. You saw in the reverse fixture. Obviously, Calvin Bassey was that trigger press, wasn't he? We jump on him, but he was playing on the right. He's a left-footed player playing on the right-hand side because of Tim Ream. They've been playing with Adebayo, who we've been linked with as well. Bassi and Adebayo, and I feel like they've sort of found their feet together.
Yeah.
So it will be interesting because they do like to have the ball, Fulham. They're really good in the transition, but when they're in possession, they do like to overlap their fullbacks, get crosses into the box. And that Muniz, he's got 5 goals in 6 games. He's
It's
a proper
crazy.
handful in the box. His movement is excellent. Like he's on a
Mm.
really, really hot run of form. And he will be a handful for Romero and Dragusin to deal with. But Dragusin probably is good for those type of strikers where crosses are coming into the box. Dragusin just getting his nut on it and getting it out, and then we go again. But we do need to make sure. I think for this game, our wingers need to come back. We need to stop that overlapping run from like Anthony Robinson, Harry Wilson crossing it in, Willian crossing it in. Our fullbacks need to be tight. Stop the cross coming in, because that's how they've capitalised on their in their games running in the run up to this game. So I do think we need to be switched on at the back, and then in transition as well. Yeah, like you said, they've got players like Traore that can impact the game. Iwobi, who's so good at progressing the ball forward in transition and getting in the box himself. So it will be a difficult game, and it will be harder than it seems. I think because Fulham are a really good team. But yeah, I do think the fact they won't park the bus does give us a lot of opportunities to affect them. How do you expect us to play against them then?
I think we've just got to continue to play our normal game. Like I think it'll be a little bit like Villa last week, where we'll have to sort of draw them out, be patient. Like you said, they're going to want to take the game to us, and I think that. But there are going to be also points where they want to sit in and soak up pressure. It might just be as the game goes on where they feel more brave and feel more confident. Because in terms of where Fulham are, they've got nothing to lose. Like this isn't a pressure game for them. They're not going to go down. They're nowhere near that. You know, they've got ambitions to finish higher in the table. And I think they're going to want to come and take the game to us rather than just try and sit in and get a result. I think, like you mentioned, Muniz can be a real handful. I've seen Postecoglou's confirm that Dragusin is going to start tomorrow. And I actually think Dragusin, being that combative, physical defender, like you said, getting his head in front of crosses, all that kind of stuff, will benefit him tomorrow. We saw against Muniz, I think it was against United, like you said, his link-up play and his movement is superb. There was one chance where he let it run across his body and hit the post and was so unlucky. And I remember just sitting up and taking notice and thinking, God, who's this guy?
Yeah.
But in terms of how we're going to play, it'll be interesting to see if he makes any tweaks with the front line, because he's also just confirmed that Richarlison is back and available for tomorrow. So whether he comes straight back in, it's a good problem to have. I think again, maybe if Fulham are going to want to sit in at points, do we go with Richarlison up front as more of that target man, or with Sonny as on fire as he is, do you kind of keep with him through the middle? And I think. But in terms of overall, in terms of how we're going to play rather than getting into personnel, I don't think it's going to be too much of a change. Like Andrew's kind of had this motto throughout the whole season that we don't change. We don't stray away from what the ideas are. And I think now that it's almost a point where this Spurs team has sort of clicked back into gear a little bit. And it's just, we want to be on autopilot essentially for the rest of the season in terms of just kind of getting that sense of familiarity with how we started in those first 10 games, including beating Fulham, to kind of allow us to click back into gear now. So I don't think much changes from a Spurs perspective, really. So it'll be interesting. But it'll be interesting to see what it does in terms of team selection, because obviously you've got Timo Werner, Brennan Johnson, Richarlison, Son, Kulusevski all available for tomorrow now. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes with the front three.
Yeah, it will be. I didn't know Richarlison was back. So that is a big plus, because he's just different to Son. He can come on, change the dynamic. I think he starts on the bench. Son starts up front, and if they do revert to a lower block, Fulham, to try and frustrate us, I think Richarlison's perfect for that type of game. But I would say Son up front, Kulusevski and Brennan Johnson. I think same front three with Maddison in behind him. But I think it works so well against Villa. They're confident, playing together. They all worked well in the lead up to every single goal we scored against Villa. So I don't think we should change the team. I think it should just be the Dragusin coming in for Van der Ven. I think that should be our only change, because I think it was just perfect against Villa. And we started very, very well. The thing I would like to say about the Spurs Fulham game, the reverse fixture earlier this season, is that when we were getting into the final third, our passing was so crisp, one touch, fast movement. There was that one bit of play that we almost scored one of the goals of the season, team goal of the season.
Was it a doggy back heel
Yeah.
where he got into? Yeah, it was
Yeah,
beautiful.
so it was Maddison on the edge of the box, looked like he's going to shoot, cut it to Son. Son just flicks it behind him. A doggy with a shot that was deflected, and then it come to Kulusevski in the box. We'd overloaded the box, and then Kulusevski's shot was blocked out wide for a corner. We were so good in that game, and the 2 goals we scored with Maddison and Son, we capitalised on a sloppy bit of play from Bassi both times, and we were just straight away, one touch, out your feet, bang, Son, that was his goal. Maddison as well, it's just bang straight away, and we were so sharp. And I feel like in recent games, I know we spanked Villa, but the play in the final third was a little bit slow. I think
we
weren't
maybe taking like
enough.
one too many touches.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know whether that was because a confidence thing when we played against Fulham. Maybe it will be the same today, but we need to be like that again because it was so effective against them. It was really, really effective against them. Who do you think's Who do you think is going to be our most important player in the game then?
It's difficult because I think last week we were looking at a real 2 evenly set up teams, 2 evenly matched teams, and nothing to really split between them in terms of the table. 50-50 battles across the pitch. If you were going to try and make a combined 11 out of those 2 teams, it was very, very tight between Tottenham and Villa. Whereas now, obviously, it's not so much about. It's tricky to say, really. I think maybe I'd go with Maddison because I just think that when you think about how we sort of got the better of them in the home game, like you said, it was about that quick passing and ruthlessness in and around the area. And I think Maddison's one of those players where since he's come back from injury, he knows that he's not been quite at his best, but he thinks he's slowly getting there. And I think with that confidence taken from the game at Villa last week, on a personal level, but also more importantly in terms of the team, like I said, I think it's about. I think when you look at the home game at the start of the season, when I talked about us earlier almost being on autopilot, that was towards the end of that run of games before we played Chelsea, where we were just like Palace away was the same. Like we had to be patient in that game, but when it clicked, it really clicked. And Fulham was the same at home. Like 2 really well constructed goals, all coming from pressing. We overloaded the box at times. It was just like it was kind of handball almost in full flow, really. And I think we saw that in the second half against Villa. And I think when you do see that with handball, Maddison is at the heart of that. And I think as his kind of as his fitness grows, as he comes back from injury, but also his confidence grows. And you know what he liked? He would have loved that game last week, Maddison. And I think he's going to take a lot from last Sunday into tomorrow, have that swagger back about him. You can sense that's coming back with Maddison. You saw it, I think, in the second half of the Palace game, actually at home, where he really dragged us into that second half. And although he only, he set up the goal for Romero, he was so much more influential in the game in terms of just dragging us forward, being that guy. So I think I would probably say Maddison for that reason. But I also think, like you alluded to earlier, I think Romero and Dragusin, the centre-backs, are going to have their work cut out with Muniz, a young striker full of confidence at the moment. Marking him out the game is going to be really crucial. Obviously, the rest of the midfield battle, I don't expect him to make any changes, really. I think it'll be Sarr and Basuma from what we saw of them 2 last week. I think it's interesting with Basuma, actually, because, and I think we might see it tomorrow if Fulham do sit off us a little bit. I was thinking about this, and we sort of touched on it on Monday. It almost feels like Basuma is playing a slightly different role now. And I think you saw it against Aston Villa. It's almost like he's sort of playing a bit like when teams like to sit in against us and we haven't had teams come onto us and press, where we do really see his ability to be press resistant and bully players out of the way and kind of drive Tottenham up the pitch. I think he's seen real composure, almost playing as this deep line playmaker, sort of spreading the ball out wide and sort of just like keeping it ticking over.
Yeah.
I think it was a few patterns of play against Villa that he was so crucial to. One in breaking the press, but also kind of linking the play further up the field. So I think he's going to be important for that as well tomorrow, because I need to double check. But like I said, I think Paulinho has been missing for Fulham for the last few weeks. And I'm not sure he's going to be back available for Fulham for tomorrow. So it's it'll be interesting to see. I think the midfield battle again is going to be crucial, but I just think Maddison, for the kind of what he's taken out of the Villa game, that swagger's back. It just feels like, got that goal. It feels like that's going to be the start now of him kicking on and kind of leading us through this run. So I'd probably go for Maddison. I don't know about you, mate.
Yeah, Maddison, 100%. He's just so influential to the way we play. He's going to be drifting into the pockets. He's going to have a bit more space, I think, in this game than he had against Villa, where a lot of his gameplay against Villa was off the ball, making decoy runs, trying to get him behind, and then coming deep, getting the ball. And Villa were obviously quite tight to him. I think he will have a lot more space. I actually think our most important players are going to be Udogie and Porro. They're so good, and they go under the radar because they're so consistent, and you don't even worry about Udogie and Porro ever. When do you worry about them defensively and in attack? They're so good, and they've got such a balance in their attack and their defense that you they just go under the radar. And then tomorrow for the Fulham game, the crosses are going to be a way that Fulham could affect us possibly. So they're going to need to be on top form when it comes to keeping tight to the winger, watching that overlapping run, and blocking the cross before and stopping that chance before it even happens. But also in attack, Porro's going to be finding himself in that 10 creative role on the ball when we're in transition and also when we're trying to break them down. And Udogie's going to be penetrating the box, overloading the box, and like he was doing in the reverse fixture, like he's doing all season. And I actually have a feeling that Udogie's going to score. I've got a feeling that Udogie's going to arrive into the box and score a goal tomorrow. I don't know why I got that feeling, but I just think they're so influential to the way we play. We've seen the difference. We didn't even talk about it. The difference Porro brought to the team than Emerson. I know Emerson was much better in the Palace game, but Porro was just another level. And we're so lucky to have him. Just got that Spanish call up, didn't he, earlier? But
well deserved as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I just think they'll be influential in both ends of the pitch tomorrow. I think we're going to need them on top form. And Udogie against Villa was exceptional as well.
Mate, he's just unbelievable. I think sort of more to your point actually about Porro and Udogie. I've just had a look and it looks like Paulinho will be back available for tomorrow for Fulham. So again, having Porro and Udogie to help overload that midfield at points to really sort of get the run of it and really sort of suffocate Fulham and not allow Paulinho maybe out of the press and allow him to sort of dictate the game because he is massive for them. Although their midfielders cope really well without him, with sort of a Iwobi tucking in there, Harrison Reed as well, who's kind of gone under the radar, having a decent season. Paulinho does make like a noticeable difference. Yeah. So I think having Porro and Udogie in there at times, inverting, kind of creating that overloading midfield in an attacking sense, but also in a defensive sense as well, to really suffocate Paulinho and stop him dictating the game, I think is going to be massive. So I think the fullbacks are a really important point. And I actually like your Udogie shout of him scoring. I thought about this earlier. I had the sort of same feeling. I don't know why. It feels like it's been coming again for a while. Like there was a beautiful move against Aston Villa, where he nearly got on the end of it, but it was just his touch that let him down. It was from front to back, him starting at driving up the pitch. Some really neat play, and it just came to him on the edge of the box. And if his touch was better, he was one-on-one with the goalkeeper. But I think you're right. I can sort of see him almost Newcastle at home-esque arriving on the goal line and being there. And like you said, he was so influential in that move that we talked about earlier when we played Fulham in the home game. He's an amazing talent. Like we gave Sarr a lot of prop last week because he was excellent. Like I know he was only on the pitch for 70 minutes, but he was arguably the man of the match and just completely dictated that midfield battle with Basuma. But Udogie was just absolutely sensational. And I think you're right to point out. I think they're going to be massive tomorrow.
They take the pressure so much off of Maddison, Sarr, and Basuma because you're saying, they overload that midfield. Udogie's got like the most dribbles in midfield out of any other Premier League player this season, which is just going to say ridiculous.
That. Yeah, I saw that after the Villa game.
Yeah, it's a joke, and it just goes to show how far they go under the radar. Obviously, with other teams looking in, rival fans looking in, you were saying about Sarr, Romero, how they don't really get much appreciation from rival fans, but we don't care because we know how essential they are to the way we play. I really think they're going to make a huge impact, just like they do every game, but in this Fulham game especially. Talking about that wing back role. Obviously, next year, if we're going to be in Europe and we're going to be in more competitions, we're going to need that wing back cover because Udogie and Porro are so crucial to the way we play that whenever Davis or Emerson come in, you see that massive drop off. And there's been in the know rumours linking us with Kyle Walker-Peters returning. How would you feel if he come back? How would that? Because it just makes a lot of sense, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a bit of a no-brainer. Like he's been one of the best players in the Championship this season. I think he's comfortable. His ability to be comfortable playing on both sides as well is crucial in terms of. It doesn't mean that we necessarily have to go out and sign two fullbacks in the summer. We can sign Walker-Peters. He's homegrown, covers two spaces in the team. He's 27 now. He's matured a lot. And I think that he'll be coming back to a very different Tottenham to what he left. And obviously, I don't think he was particularly happy with how things were handled towards the end. I don't think, being used in that as the make weight in that deal for Højbjerg. And I think a lot of fans were unhappy about it at the time.
Yeah, it didn't sit well.
We all saw Walker Peters as the guy who was going to be the future of Spurs, or certainly part of it. I remember under Pochettino when he first got given his chance, I remember 3 assists on Boxing Day against Bournemouth and all these kind of things. He looked like, at that young age, that he looked like someone who was going to be a future first team player. And it'd been a while since we'd had someone kind of penetrate the first team from the academy in that way, since Kane or Weeks just after him. So I think it was a bit of a shame the way he left. But I don't think it'd be necessarily a problem getting him back. I think we've still got a release clause on him as well, potentially around 30 million. And I think that might seem a lot of money for a player coming out of the Championship, but the way that transfer values have inflated over the last few years, and I think the depth of talent that's in the Championship, I think it'd be well worth the money. Like I said, he can cover 2 places. I think I talked about this a while ago. I did another podcast for the Lab, part of the Fighting Cock, talking about summer transfers. And I think, obviously, it was after the Wolves game, it became very clear that we're going to need 2 fullbacks to challenge Porro and Udogie. And we did the podcast in the aftermath of that game, and it felt right to talk about it then. And I think that there can be sometimes there can be too much kind of importance placed on the role of an inverted fullback, because that position doesn't exist on the pitch. It's a role, it's a role that you kind of have to mould someone into. Destiny Udogie and Pedro Porro are both brought in as wing backs for Spurs. Yeah. And they've adapted incredibly because they're both young, both very malleable, both very technically gifted, both strong enough to play that position, especially with Udogie. Like you talked about it in terms of more dribbles into midfield than any player in the Premier League this season. I saw Stephen Warnock talking about that after the game. He brought up that stat. And he said it. He's kind of got that right arm to fend people off and just get out of the way. Like he's so technically gifted and so secure on the ball, so keeps the ball on a string close to his feet. But also, if he wants to run, he can run. Like he can just push people out the way and go with it. So obviously Walker Peters is a different kind of profile to that. But if you kind of compare him to Porro, Walker Peters is very gifted on the ball, like very, very technically gifted, very spatially aware. Like I think he'd make a lot of sense. And like I said, I don't think, we shouldn't be going into the market looking at players who are already an inverted fullback. Because like I said, it doesn't exist. It's about moulding these players into that and about their technical ability and their kind of defensive awareness. And how they play with their head up and stuff. And I think Walker Peters would fit perfectly into that. He was always an attacking right back when he played for Spurs anyway. He was always involved getting up the pitch. And some of the positions you see him take up for Southampton this season, spraying balls out, scoring goals. Mm-hmm. He's always been that kind of fullback, even when they were in the Premier League. So I think if it's not Tottenham, I think and if Southampton don't come up, and even if they do come up, I think if it's not Spurs, there will be Premier League teams sniffing around him.
Yeah, 100%. And we have a 30 mil buyback clause. David Ornstein reported it the January in 2020. I think
it was last summer, or maybe the January
it was a
last
year ago. Some point last year he reported that Spurs have a buyback clause on him for 30 mil, but Man United and Arsenal were sort of monitoring him. And he is a great player. Well, I mean, he was so good under Poch. When he was coming through, there was games where he'd be playing at right back and he'd look like an established player, and he was so good at making the overlap and crossing it in. But obviously he can invert as well. It just makes so much sense because I know 30 mil is a lot of money. Maybe even if Southampton don't get promoted, we can negotiate that to a bit of a lower fee. But we're signing him to cover 2 positions. We'll be spending way over 30 mil on 2 players. So it kind of makes sense to keep Davis 1 more year, maybe keep Emerson 1 more year, because they seem like they're really good for the squad and the cohesion in the squad and further depth. But sign a player that can utilise both positions. And he's perfect for that. He's perfect. And he'll know the squad. He was so loved before, not only by the dressing room, but by the fans. It's always good to have someone that's one of your own playing for you. And there was a bit of a distaste in the mouth when we used him in that Højbjerg deal.
It didn't feel right.
No, because also it was just one season that he had a poor run for, and that was under Mourinho, where he didn't fit that system. He
was injured as well. He was injured. I remember it was when Poch was at the start of that last season where he got sacked. Like I remember he got injured in one of the first few games of the season at home to Newcastle, and then we didn't see him again under Poch. And then Mourinho came in. I think he was still out, but then when he came back, didn't fancy him. And I think he went on loan to Southampton then, wasn't it? That's when it first... Or did he go on loan somewhere else? I can't remember. I think it might have been he went on loan to Southampton and then it was made permanent in the summer as part of that Højbjerg deal. So, like you said, whether he was injured or not, Mourinho sort of took one look at him and didn't really fancy him. And obviously, I don't think Mourinho's kind of judge of talent has been the best over the last few years. And I think we dropped a bit of a bollock there, to be honest. Like, it was. He went on loan in the January when Mourinho came in, and has been there basically ever since. Over 120 games for them. It's crazy. I've just looked at it. He only ever played 12 games for Spurs in the Premier League, but it felt like more than that.
Oh my god! I thought he was with us for like 3 years, playing like playing in a rotation role. Covering Trippier.
It felt like towards the end of that season where he first broke through, he was playing every week.
Yeah, he was quality. I loved him, and I know Mourinho. Yeah, it was really unlucky for him that he's breaking through. He got an injury, and then we played fossil football with a manager that just didn't play a way that suited his attributes. And even in that documentary, it was like Mourinho decided that he weren't good enough for his system when he found out his name. Do you remember? He was like, he said, Walker or Peters? And and then he's like, both, Walker Peters. Like, that's my name. He's like, it's too long, man. And then he sold him.
So
it was like, I don't know. It was really harsh to see him leave permanently. And the deal for Højbjerg is interesting because he may be coming in, and in the same summer Højbjerg has been shipped out. Sorry.
It's kind of gone full circle, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's ironic, I think. And obviously it was 15 mil, and then was it a separate deal for Carl Walker-Peters or something?
Yeah, it was basically sort of a player plus cash deal, but not really. It was one of those, because you don't often see swap deals anymore. So it was kind of like that without it being a proper swap deal. It was
like
a bit
Madison
of
and Winks.
Yeah, basically, pretty much. So, maybe we'll go back to Southampton. Who knows?
Yeah,
I very much doubt it. Yeah, you can have him back.
A little swap again. But who do you think got the? Actually, it's interesting. Who do you think got a better deal in the long term of Spurs and Højbjerg and Walker-Peters Southampton?
It's tricky because I do like Højbjerg. Like he's been a good servant to the club. He's been a useful player in the squad for a few years. There was a time where he was crucial to us, like under Conte and that sort of, in the first season that he came in. But I think in terms of in the long term, who's got the better end of the deal? It's definitely Southampton. Because he's been an amazing player for them over the last few years, and they'll be able to make a decent bit of money on him, even with the buyback clause. Or if it's not Tottenham that exercises that and it's another club that comes in, they're going to be looking for at least 30, 35 million. So for what they've got out of him and the kind of juice that they've squeezed, I think they've definitely got the better end of the deal. It'd be interesting because saying that, I do think Spurs will make profit on Højbjerg in the summer. Like there will be, I think he's got a year left on his contract in the summer. It won't go for his full market value. But there'll be European clubs coming in for him. We saw that in the summer last year. So I think it's close, but I'd probably say Southampton overall got the better end of it.
I think from a financial standpoint, I think they're laughing just because they've had the player for three years, and then they're going to make more. They're going to make a profit on him from the same club if he does come back to Spurs. And then obviously they got the money for Højbjerg as well. So I really like Højbjerg when it comes to his importance and his experience in the team. And you see it when he comes on in games. He's so effective because he just shores up that midfield. He is replaceable though. He definitely is replaceable. And I don't know. I think I think probably Southampton got the better deal, although they got relegated. So we've been playing Champions League games with Højbjerg. Obviously, that Højbjerg goal against Marseille was crucial for us to lose to AC Milan, but it still got us through. So I don't know. It's quite a tough one. But if we're getting Walker-Peters back, then why did we sell him in the first place? I feel like Southampton definitely got the better end of the deal. But Walker-Peters does make perfect sense. Can cover both fullback positions. He's homegrown. He's squad trained, which is vital for the Champions League. I really think. Oh, he's part of the CEA base as well, base agency. So I do think it's quite likely that he'd come back. It just makes perfect sense. And I wouldn't mind it. But yeah, I really think we've failed in our recruiting homegrown players big time in the last few years, and now we're bringing back players that were homegrown that we had in the first place. What do you make of that homegrown scouting sort of thing? Because I was looking yesterday, and obviously Maddison's the only player in that England squad that got called up from Spurs. And I was just thinking back from a selfish point of view. Obviously, like I'm English. I was looking back like 6 years ago when 5 of the starting 11 for England were Spurs players. We had Rose, Walker, Dyer, Ali, Kane. And now it's just Maddison, and he's a rotation player for England. So I was just thinking, we've really, really failed in the academy, bringing players through, but also signing and recruiting homegrown players. We're not. I don't know. What do you think?
And Chuck Trippier in there as well. You know, he was a
Course,
vital part of that
yeah,
squad.
course,
Score like 6, not starting, but 6 players in the squad in the World Cup in 2018 was incredible, and we've not been anywhere near that since. And obviously, there's kind of circumstances around that in the way that Dele Alli's career has panned out. Obviously, Eric Dyer got back in the England squad and then sort of just fallen away again since. But yeah, it's a shame really, because like you said, it was an amazing time to see that many players in the squad. I think Tottenham's kind of handling of some of the players that have come through the club and in terms of their development hasn't been the best over the last few years. Maybe not sending players out on loan at the right times or loan moves not working out, which is not always in Spurs' control, but it's just not been, it hasn't felt cohesive and it hasn't felt strategic, I guess. Whereas now it feels like we're at a point where with some of the players coming through the academy, it feels like there's been a bit of a change there. So that's positive for the future. But for the now, it's disappointing when you just see it's Maddison. Like you said, he's not a key player for England. He'll go to the Euros 100% in the summer, and he's a key man that Southgate likes to call up. But it's not Harry Kane. It's not Dele Alli was starting for England in World Cup semi-finals. It's a shame, and I think even like you said, sort of the players that we've brought in recently, like homegrown players, it just hasn't really worked out. Like you think of the likes of Jack Clarke, or not bringing in these homegrown players at the right times, not signing the likes of Maddison when we should have done. Jack Grealish, Ebery Eze, who I think is obviously a homegrown player that Spurs will be looking at in the summer for sure. But it's not. It's disappointing, and it's not felt particularly cohesive from Spurs over the last few years with that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then you can see that I think Spurs have realised it, because we're putting in players into the squad list for competitions that shouldn't be really in the squad, or we're keeping hold of players for a bit too long just because they match that homegrown quota. And also it prevents the academy players from then going out on loan. And for their development, it stunts their development, because we have to keep hold of them. We never play them because they're not ready, just because we need to get to that homegrown quota needed for competition. So I do think this summer we're definitely going to be looking for homegrown recruitment 100%. I think we're going to see a few signings at least, and obviously Cole Peters matches that. What homegrown players then would you like to sign that are out there that would fit the system? Have you got a handful of players that you'd be like, yeah, they'd fit the system, they come in and they definitely make the England squad in the next year or so?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking young players, there's a load out there, but I think the standout one is Ebery Eze. Yeah. We don't need to, we've talked about Eze so much, to the point where it's just exactly. Obviously, in January, we were linked with Adam Wharton quite a lot from Blackburn, who ended up going to Crystal Palace, 19-year-old. It's been really impressive for them. That's someone that Spurs have missed out on, but you can understand why he went to Palace. I think Spurs were just interested. Hayden Hackney from Middlesbrough was another centre midfielder that Spurs have been looking at. And then you look at Conor Gallagher as well. Conor Gallagher is someone there's been a hell of a lot of chat about, obviously fishing in a completely different pond to some of the talent in the Championship. That would cost a serious amount of money, and obviously Chelsea's financial situation may alleviate some of that for Spurs in terms of the fact that they might have to sell him. So I think it's the main two targets. I think obviously they do count as homegrown, but they're slightly more experienced and older. Would be Eze and/or Gallagher. Yeah. But there's the Championship is rife with talent, young English talent. It's such a hotbed at the moment. And I know Walker Peters' career wasn't made in the Championship. Well, it kind of was, but I think we've seen the best of him in the Championship. And obviously he's 27, so he's that little bit older. But there's so much young talent that's flourishing. You look at the likes of how Palace have sort of brought in players from those leagues. Obviously Eze was one we missed out on. Elise, I think technically homegrown, although he's French. I think players like that they've managed to sort of bring in and be really smart with their recruitment. So I think Spurs do need to kind of adopt that sort of same model a little bit, really. There's been some Ange quotes from the press conference today about how he doesn't think that getting in the Champions League would affect our transfer policy for the summer, which I think some fans interpret that in different ways. And some will say that shows a lack of ambition. But to me, that says that the club are financially in a position, whether it's Europa League or Champions League, to bring in the players that they want to bring in, which I think is really encouraging. And I do think you do have to sprinkle in a little bit of that building towards the future. But I think it's almost not as prevalent, or maybe not as pertinent as it was maybe in the past, just because of some of the players that are already at the club that are coming through. You think of Alfie Devine on loan, Ashley Phillips on loan.
Yeah.
Alfie Dorrington has just come back from injury, training with the first team again. Jamie Donnelly, Will Lancashire, Dane Scarlett. We've got these players that and this is why I said, like, obviously, hopefully we're going to be in the Champions League, but being in the Europa League next season wouldn't be the end of the world for Spurs to kind of continue developing these players. And I think it's as much about that as like looking at players from the Championship or the Premier League, young homegrown players to bring in as well. So, I don't know if there's any players that you were thinking of.
Well, it does look like we definitely have a plan in place now. Obviously, we've set up a lot more of a structure to our club, and there is a big focus on that academy, because that just makes our life so much easier. I mean, you look at the academies that like Chelsea. Obviously, we'd have to be smart than Chelsea because they've sold a lot of their quality homegrown players, but you can either make a profit off of them if they're good enough, or you have a team that's built around players that know what it is to play for the club. And then, but the problem is when you sign players, homegrown players, around the Premier League, Championship, they've always got that sort of that English tax, or do you know what I mean? Because people know they're homegrown, so they know the value, so you pay a little bit more. But I really like obviously Eze Gallagher links just don't go away, but he would suit the system. I really like Branthwaite from Everton, but I just think he would really suit the system as well. But because he's quite deceptively quick, but he just cost a fortune. And there's another player I thought about, and I actually saw that he was part of the CEA base, and it got me thinking. But it does sound a bit out there. But you've seen it with Chelsea and Cole Palmer, Rico Lewis. He would suit. He said in interviews that his ideal position is a number 8 box to box. He's covered 6, and he's covered both fullbacks. He could be like 4 birds, 1 stone, a signing like that. And he's 19, homegrown. The only thing is his height, and the price tag would be huge. But he hasn't really been playing that consistently for City. I don't know how realistic that is. I might be talking like I'm playing career mode. But
he's a bit of a, like you said, I think he's a bit of a Swiss Army knife of a player, isn't he? He can adapt to so many different positions. He's played at fullback, played in midfield. There's so much technical ability there. I think him as like an inverted right back or left back, I think he could thrive there for sure. I like it. I do think it's one of those ones where he's almost had the exposure for first team football at City. He's been sort of brought back out of the limelight a little bit, but in the future, I do think he'll stick around. But you thought that about Palmer. And I think it's some of these players at City will look at it and just think, well, if I'm not going to get my game time here, then I'll look elsewhere. And I think Lewis would be someone to keep an eye on. I don't mind that.
I do think they're sort of looking at him as the long-term replacement for Kyle Walker. But you've seen how he was in the England squad last squad selection, and now he's not. I don't think he's in the England squad. I don't know actually, but
no, he's not.
I didn't see him in the England squad, so and he just hasn't been playing that much. So I don't know. I don't know if we're in the Championship, we'd be a team that he'd want to go to. But I don't know. I just saw that. I saw him on the CEA base agency, and I was like,
yeah, could we?
I
think Branthwaite's an interesting one as well because he'll cost a lot of money, and would it make sense to sign someone like him when you've got Dragusin, Van der Ven, and Romero? But I think if you're looking at Van der Ven, in terms of Van der Ven's profile, I think Branthwaite is one of the most similar players I've seen in terms of he's definitely a more. I think Branthwaite's qualities have more been seen like on the ball, but his defensive work is quality, and he's different to Van der Ven. But I do think if you're looking at kind of similar profiles, he's probably the most similar you could probably find out there. But it'd be like, he'd cost so much money.
Yeah, it would.
And I'm not sure it's ridiculous. Worth it.
No. Unless they got relegated. I don't know.
Yeah. I can see him going to United or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised. Or even, I wouldn't be surprised if someone like City came in for Branthwaite. Like feels like they maybe don't need a centre-back. But it's just sort of thing they do, like building towards the future. But I think United will go big for him in the summer.
No, I can definitely see that happening. Almost like a Maguire like replacement. That's sort of the player. He could be the player that Maguire was supposed to be. Do you know what I mean? But
especially in this kind of new era with Ineos and stuff like that. The kind of the way they're sort of shifting. It feels like, and there's been a lot of links, but there's been links to Tottenham as well. Like because like Liverpool aren't going to buy him. City, like I said, I think City could sniff around. Arsenal feel pretty set in terms of their centre backs. Obviously, Kivior's been really good for them recently. I know he's been playing at left back, but he's still an option. They've got Ben White. Like, it feels like it'd be Tottenham and United because, again, like you can't see him going to Villa. Like, if he's going to make a massive step up, then I think it'll be Tottenham or United potentially. So something to keep an eye on.
Well,
I do really like him.
In the Q&A, there's a question from Henry on TikTok saying, should we get a new centre-back in the summer? I actually think, I mean, obviously he'd be like a dream, but I just think we brought in Dragusin, Van der Ven and Romero worked so well. I feel like the signing we make as a centre-back needs to be quite smart, because I feel like we will sign a centre-back. I think it needs to be a smarter signing. I think that someone that can play centre-back and full-back, or someone like, is it Itakura from Borussia Mönchengladbach?
Yeah.
Plettenberg was saying that we're interested in a man wanting him at Celtic, and he's got a release clause this summer for like £10 million, and he's part of the CAA base agency. So like something like that would be smarter than going 60 mil for Branthwaite, and then that's 60% of our transfer budget completely gone on a backup sort of squad player. So I don't know. I think the centre back signings has to be quite smart. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. There's been a lot of links to William Pacho as well from Frankfurt, the Ecuadorian centre-back. I talked about him on the episode of The Lab that we talked about for the summer. Like, in terms of his recovery pace, very similar to Van der Ven. Not quite got the physical frame, but it's got the pace and got the ball-carrying ability on that left-hand side as well. He'd cost, not serious money, but, more than someone like who you mentioned from Gladbach. It'd be less than Branthwaite, or maybe it's... sort of obviously like last summer where we were linked with both Tapsoba and Van der Ven, and we went for sort of the cheaper, smarter option in Van der Ven, which has ended up paying dividends massively. And it feels like Pacho is sort of a similar signing out of that mould, having a quietly very good season for Frankfurt, and there's been a lot of links to him. So I think he would suit the system really, really well from what I've seen of him. But yeah, it's interesting because I do, like you said, it wouldn't be in a massive area of priority, but I think it's something that Spurs will do. I do think Spurs will sign a centre-back in the summer. Obviously, you've got Dorrington and Phillips still there as well. I wonder if one of them will go out on loan again next year, potentially. Obviously, you're going to have a bigger squad for European football. And it depends, obviously, what happens with Emerson and Davis as well, because both of those two players can cover a centre-back. So I don't think it'll be an area of massive priority, or certainly not from the fans' perspective. But I think if Spurs are kind of using these transfer windows to continue to build towards the future, I think Pacho is around 23 years old. Mm-hmm. So I think it would make sense. But I think maybe the money could be better spent elsewhere, and I do think that's why a signing like Branthwaite would quite work, just because he's too expensive. He's 22, Pacho.
Okay,
So I think he'd fit in quite nicely. Like I said, I think Branthwaite's kind of the dream, but I just don't. I think with the players we've already got there, it's a tricky one to make it work.
Yeah. So it's looking like fifth place is going to be a Champions League spot. Obviously, Arsenal won in the Champions League. Villa, West Ham getting through in the Europa League.
Yeah, cheers, West Ham.
Yeah.
Last one, guys.
So it is looking like we got Champions League. What's your thoughts on the fixture run leading to the end of the season compared to Aston Villa, Man United?
Yeah, well, I saw a thing that there was a Opta graph actually talking about the most difficult fixtures which teams essentially have the easiest and hardest running.
Yeah.
So Aston Villa, statistically, according to Opta, have the second hardest run in the Premier League for the rest of the season. They've got to play West Ham away, Wolves at home, City away, Brentford at home, Arsenal away, Bournemouth at home, Chelsea at home, Brighton away, Liverpool at home, and Crystal Palace away. So they've got the second hardest run.
At least they've got their captain for the next few games as well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. And Watkins got injured last night as well. So
did he?
Apparently, yeah. He got injured, then he scored, but I think he then came off. And a lot of Villa fans were saying it looked like a bad one, but I'm not sure whether that's the case. Obviously, we'll see what happens.
Oh, no.
I think Man United. Yeah. Oh, what? No. What? What? Not shame. I really like Ollie Watkins as well. Yeah, Man United, I think, that statistically, at least speaking, and obviously you can't just do it based on stats, but they've got a more straightforward run in than us, but it's Man United. This is the thing. United have got to play Sheffield United at home, Brentford away, Chelsea away, Liverpool at home, and obviously they've got Liverpool at home in the Cup this weekend, so that'll be an interesting barometer of where they're at for that game.
Yeah.
Bournemouth away, Newcastle at home. They've got to go to Palace. They've got to play Arsenal, and they've got to play Brighton away on the last game of the season. So, although it's not statistically as hard as maybe what Tottenham have got on paper, there's a lot of games in there where you think, well, it's Man United. Like going to Brighton away on the last game of the season,
they'll lose that.
I think so. They've been battered there in the recent past. And obviously Tottenham's running is difficult, but maybe that fifth place has taken the pressure off a little bit. Obviously, it keeps United in the hunt as well, so it kind of gives them that little bit of added extra incentive. Obviously, it's not wrapped up, it's not guaranteed, and I don't think Tottenham can afford to kind of play like it's guaranteed, although it seems very, very likely, because you could have City and Arsenal both in the Champions League semi-finals. You could have West Ham and Liverpool have been kept apart in the Europa League draw, but West Ham have got to play Bayer Leverkusen. And obviously, it's Germany we're kind of going up against for that coefficient place, which is why it was so big that West Ham beat Freiburg last night. But now you feel that they will lose to Bayer Leverkusen. Italy have lost most of their teams, and Roma are playing Milan in the Europa League quarterfinal as well. So that'll be another Italian team out. Liverpool, you'd imagine, to get through against Atalanta, which is another Italian team knocked out, and another English side through. Obviously, Brighton went out last night against an Italian side. So there's moving parts all the time, but it just feels in terms of how things will probably shape up towards the end of the season that fifth will be enough. But it doesn't change anything for me. Like, you're still looking at those games. It adds a little bit of a safety net, but like you said, we're aiming for higher than fourth anyway. We've got to see what we can do. Like, if we put a run of games together and then we go into those games against City, Liverpool and Arsenal, and could we?
We're hitting form at the right. We're hitting the form at the right time. We are, definitely. I just think we can't use fifth place as an excuse. Like, even Anne just said that he's not playing for fifth place. Like, I feel like we're too good to go, and we've had too good of a season to finish fifth below Aston Villa. That's not a big enough statement going into the next year. We need to, in my mind, we need to forget that fifth place spot as if it's the Europa League spot, and we need to not loosen up in the way we play. We need to be just as intense, and I feel like Ange will want this as well, and this is what we'll do. But we need to make a marker on this Premier League table and say, look, at the end of the season, you've had your title race, Arsenal, City and Liverpool, but look who's right on your shoulder, like Spurs. And this is our first season under Ange. And a season where a season where everyone wrote us off at the beginning. Everyone was saying we're going to finish mid to low end of the table. So I don't care about this fifth place spot. I want to finish fourth, because fifth place doesn't feel as good as fourth. Like, fifth place would be like, oh, we're in there by the skin of our teeth because of this, like the way the tournament structure is for next year. I don't care. Like, I want to finish fourth. I want to finish above Aston Villa. Like, I don't think it's acceptable finishing below Aston Villa as good as they have been this season.
That's interesting. I have a slightly different attitude, but only just because I do think that in terms of the way I see it is that, like I said, I'd love to finish fourth. I'd love to be in the Champions League next season. I'd love to be right on the coattails of Arsenal, City and Liverpool. I'd love to challenge for a top 3 spot, and I think we can do it. I think we can really push them close. However, I do think we'll finish fourth. I do think we'll get the better of Villa just about. But actually, I think that it's funny because I think there is a weird difference between like finishing fifth and getting into the Champions League and finishing fifth and getting into the Europa League. I don't know what it is, but I'd actually feel like I can't explain why. And I've sort of spoken about this for a while in terms of how I think the Europa League will be a good stepping stone for Tottenham next season.
You've been consistent in this.
Yeah. And I actually weirdly think that finishing fifth and getting in the Europa would feel a little bit, I'm not saying feel better, but like you said, it's like sneaking in there as that fifth place team, and it's like, well, actually Villa were better over the course of the season and that sort of stuff. Like, if you want to get in the Champions League, you want to finish in the top 4.
Yeah.
And I don't care how it comes back. If we get to fifth at the end of the season and it guarantees Champions League football, we're celebrating all the same. But like you said, you want to aim higher than that. I think we should have loftier ambitions, and I think our aim should be aim as high as possible. And if that means that we finish fourth, then brilliant. But I get where you're coming from.
I know what you mean though. Like, I can see where you come from, because obviously fourth and fifth is what the difference between fourth and fifth usually, and it has been forever, is the team that is worthy of Champions League and the team that just isn't quite. And if we finish fifth, we're going to be in the Champions League, and we're going to be ahead of where we're supposed to be in terms of our trajectory, and we're going to be punching above our weight, because we didn't deserve to get into the Champions League in the grand scheme of things, but we've snuck in by the competition rule change. So I do know what you mean. Is if we finish fifth, I kind of want it so that is a Europa League spot, because that's where we are. Like, we're not deceiving anyone. We're going to be in Champions League, and then it's too soon. Our team gets injured. We're not good enough, and it has a negative impact on our mentality because we're getting spanked in the Champions League because we're not there yet. I don't think that's actually going to happen. I think we'll give every team a go, but it could happen. You've seen it with Newcastle. So I don't want to get there too soon unless we are ready. And I feel like that's where we need to be smart in the transfer window. But I just think I do get where you're coming from, because it's deceiving if you come fifth and then you're in the Champions League. You don't, and also you kind of feel like you didn't deserve it as well.
Yeah, it's a
like
weird feeling that you can't really explain. But it doesn't make sense, because at the end of the day, Champions League, you're in it, whether you're fourth or fifth, you know. And we've been fucked over by these rule changes in the past, so it's kind of good to be, you know, like actually have it benefit us for once, if it does happen, of course. But it is a weird sort of thing that you can't explain. But I do think when it comes to the end of the season, and like I said about Postecoglou, in terms of like our transfer policy won't change, like we're going to be ambitious regardless. If we were up at Sheffield United and we end up finishing also the difference between it could be like goal difference or a point or something, so it's like it's not going to signify that Villa are massively ahead of us, or God forbid it's Man United. I can't see that. But yeah, I think we'll feel differently about it at the end of the season, when hopefully we're up in Sheffield having a party because we've finished in the Champions League space and looking ahead to next season, because you know, that feeling on the final whistle when you've just won a game is different to how you feel now, sort of looking forward. So it's weird. It's interesting. I can't really.
It's a weird feeling. If we get fifth and then we're in the Champions League, we're obviously going to be buzzing. But it's like,
oh yeah, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I can't. Yeah, like you say, you can't explain it. It's a weird feeling. Let's move on to the Q&As then, because we've had a few. Obviously, we touched on Henry's question on TikTok about the centre backs. Joshua on Twitter says, "Who do you reckon has the largest meat sword in our squad?" I'm going to answer first. All right.
Yeah, go on.
Brian Hill.
Brian Hill is secretly packing. You don't expect it.
He's all of his physicality has gone into his knob. And so he's just so flimsy and like limp. Like when he's playing football, he's always getting bodied off the ball. But actually, he's got the biggest knob in the whole change room.
In the gym, just doing bicep curls just with his dick. Rather than like on the weights. Everyone else is just like pumping and he's just there, just like lads.
Hands behind his head.
Yeah. Shout out Hotspur Podcast, by the way. That's Joshua from that. It was funny.
Legend. That's so funny. Who do you think then?
It's got to be, for me, like, I'd say Van der Ven. I think it's just like, I reckon packing some serious heat down there.
Yeah.
Like there used to be the song about Vertonghen, didn't there? About his massive cock and tucking it in his sock and all this. Like, I feel like Van der Ven is like the you know, we always sort of called him like the next gen Vertonghen, but he's like Vertonghen like made in a lab, like you sort of like you on text earlier. So like he's like, for me, like you just made him as quick as possible, like as big as possible, and like if you're gonna make him as big as possible, you're gonna make his knob as big as possible as well.
I'm not being funny. If he had a tiny little chode, it would be so disappointing. Do you know what I mean? Like he does it like he's been made in a lab, and it's the same with like Dragusin as well. I think you're talking about Dragusin's, like, I mean, look at him. Him and Van der Ven do look like they're lab made.
Yeah,
humans.
He's packing the dragon. That's where it comes from.
The heat. I feel like you're hearing about him, how disciplined he is. He almost is like a robot. So I feel like he's got all the genetics to definitely be packing.
I reckon Kulusevski as well.
Do you reckon?
Because I think like he looks like one of those kids in school, right? That you think that just like I don't know, not kids, by the way, like not like oh god, yeah, he just I can't explain it. Like he just looks like someone who's just looks like he's big anyway, but like he just looks like he shouldn't, but I bet he just does.
Yeah, like there was always people in the change rooms at school where like you'd be hiding away in the corner, like trying to put like your shorts on.
Yeah, turn around, putting your pants on.
Yeah, someone would be strolling in, like walking in quite awkwardly. Like they'd always like have their head down and like not owning it, but you'd be like, oh my god, they got like Cumberland sausage. Yeah. So. Yeah, I can see it. Anyway, let's move on to Valentine Sules on TikTok, who's gone for a different type of question. He says, who do you think we're signing? Who do you think we'll sign this summer? And I'm gonna bear that in mind because we've talked about signings quite a bit. I'm going to talk about something that come out just before we come onto this pod from Mike McGrath, saying that Richarlison's expected to be the subject of a lot of interest from Saudi Arabia clubs as their marquee signing in the summer. And my question to you is, would you sell him? We put a poll on this on Twitter as well. Go check it out, go vote, because I'm really intrigued to see where the fan base is at in terms of selling him. What would you do if it was your choice?
It's interesting. I saw that come out as well. Like, at the moment, there's been 19 votes and it's 57% keep. So I think I would.
It's interesting.
I would probably go with. I think I'd keep Richarlison. I don't think the Spurs are under any pressure to sell him. If you're going to look at like a big striker in the summer, like as in a big name striker, then I think maybe that you have to just for the balance of the squad. But I don't feel like Spurs are going to do that. So I would probably lean towards keeping Richie. I think he's a very valuable option, whether it's off the bench or starting games. He allows you that rotation. I can't see it personally. I would keep him, I think.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and I'm quite torn on it at the moment because at the beginning of the season, everyone would have said sell, but he's just come into this streak of form, and where he actually looks like, hang on, there's a player here, and he's very good as a player that we can interchange with Son up front. That would add something different. He does add something different to Son in the attack. The thing is, and he's so good for the change room as well, and you love him. You love to have him. And the fan base love him. The teammates love him. I think Ange loves him because he works relentlessly for the team as well. And you feel so happy for him gaining that form. But I don't know. I'm torn because there's so many other players that would suit the system that would be better than having Richarlison up front. And if we sell him for, say, if it's a marquee signing for Saudi Arabian clubs, that's not going to be lower than... I don't think it's going to be lower than 45 mil. I think we're going to try and get as much, as close as possible to that 60 mil point that we signed him from, just so we're quite even. And I can see it happening. I can see him being lured in by that Saudi Arabian project because there's a lot of Brazilian connection in that league. Obviously with Neymar there, Malcolm. There's other players as well, but I can see it. It's just I just think if we sell him for 60 mil. That means we're gonna if we're gonna better him as a player, if we're gonna get a player in that's better than him, we're gonna have to spend 80 mil or 90 mil, and I can't see us spending that much on a player. We don't really do that on players, and the last time we did that was Richarlison, and we haven't really got his full value out of him yet. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where I stand. I keep him, I'm happy. If we sell him, I'll be like, it's sad to see him go, but let's see who else we can bring in. Maybe like a Gyökeres or someone that would just suit that system down to a T. But then again, he's 100 mil. So, and after 2 good seasons at Coventry and Sporting. So it's interesting. He would bring in a lot of money. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a really tricky one. I think if Spurs are going to be ambitious, then someone like a Gyökeres would be amazing. But like you said, the price tag is so hefty, and it feels like Arsenal are going to make him their number one target as well. From apparently,
hell.
Yeah, I know.
So annoying.
Fuck off. Just
go away.
I know.
Where are they getting the money from?
No one likes you.
Yeah.
Just fuck
Cringe
off.
club.
I hate him so much. Did you see the Ben White?
Oh my fucking days! Ridiculous.
Just
want to say Ben White.
R.I.P. Ben White, by the way.
Yeah, it was like he died. It was genuinely like he died. And like your first thing, it's like so cringy. Like the first thing you see on a Ben White new contract extension is Odegaard like brushing his hair. And then they're like, how do I describe Ben White?
Oh,
he's shit.
Yeah, Poro clear.
Yeah. Nah, he's not. I mean, he's a decent player, but to have a tribute like that, it was as if he'd fucking died. Like you said, it was so over the top and so in your face, looking for attention. That's what it was, and that is just so Arsenal are. Yeah,
exactly. Just make you want to feel sick. But strikers. I think. Be interesting. I'm kind of the same. Like, I'd probably rather him stay, but if we get good money from him and then look at another option, then I wouldn't be too against it. Although I do think we'd miss something with him, maybe, in terms of the squad and what he can do. And it obviously feels a bit harsh to sort of just let him go after what he's done. But And we can't get too ahead of ourselves either. Like, this is still a long-term thing. Richarlison's still only, 20, 26, 27?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
It's not as if we're talking about shipping out someone who's been here for years. I would probably lean towards keeping him, I think.
But we have seen it with, say, Eric Dyer. We had the opportunity to sell him to Man United for 50 mil, and then he ended up being a bit dead wood. I don't know how Richarlison he could keep this form up, but he could hit another slump and be a bit of a liability in attack, like he was at the beginning of the season when everyone was saying we should get rid of him. Like I just think you never know how it's going to turn out. Would you cash in on him? And although I can't see us spending big on a winger and then selling Richarlison, then spending even bigger on a striker. I'd love to see like a Gyökeres come in and a really good expensive winger, but I just don't. We're not going to operate that way. I just don't think. What for the Fulham game? Before we go, what's your score predictions?
I think we're going to win. 2-0. I'm going to go 2-0. I think we'll keep another clean sheet. I think it's going to be a solid display from Romero and Dragusin at the back.
Yeah,
I just feel confident. I think. I like your shout of the Udogie goal. I'm going to go 2-0, and I'm going to go for Sonny to get on the score sheet again, and I'm going to go for another Johnson goal.
Okay.
2-0. 2-0
nice.
Son Johnson.
I'm going to go 2-0 as well. I was thinking 2-0. But I'm going for Destiny Udogie and Dejan Kulusevski.
Nice.
And then he goes to the crowd and goes, I'm him.
I'm him.
Yeah.
Love it.
As we're going mental.
That'd be quality.
I think 2-0. I can see Dragusin Romero having a good game against Benitez. It's a good battle. If we're alert to the crossing, at the crosses, and we're alert to the transition. We didn't have Bissouma last game against Fulham either. It was Højbjerg. I think it was one of the first games Bissouma was suspended for. So Bissouma will be good in that, cutting out the transitions, and same with Sarr. I think we'll keep another clean sheet. Score 2 goals, job done, move on to the next game. But it will be a much trickier game than I think we're expecting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Legend, what's your socials then? Shout them out.
First of all, go and follow us. Go and follow Darren and Doing Pod on everything: TikTok, Instagram. We've got over nearly 550 followers on TikTok now, which has been quality. In 2 weeks.
Yeah, so good. Thank you so much.
That's all right, mate. You're the one making. I'm just putting it out there. You're the one doing this. But yeah, TikTok, Instagram, and then myself. Ben Talks Football on TikTok, Ben Bowman on Twitter. You probably already know that by now. And keep an eye out as well for the lab, the Fighting Cock. The big things coming soon with that. Some exciting things coming. So keep an eye on everything with that as well. And go and support that. You
are becoming the face of Spurs media. Do you know that?
Well, let's not go that far.
I've got a long way
to surpass Ben Haynes yet. That handsome boy. I'm coming for him though. But no, mate. Yeah, it's been mad.
Quality. Legend. All right, everyone. Catch you later. Up the Spurs. Let's hope we come away from Fulham with 3 points.
COYS. Bosh.